The evening was quiet, and the huge house stood still like a silent palace. The man who owned it, a billionaire by name and wealth, sat alone in his study room. The walls were decorated with fine art, the shelves filled with books he had collected from across the world, and the floor covered with thick rugs from distant lands. Yet, despite the beauty around him, his heart felt heavy, almost empty. Riches had filled his life but had not filled the quiet space inside him. For many years, he had built companies, signed deals, and earned more money than he ever dreamed of. But tonight, none of it seemed to matter. His mind was far away, traveling back in time, to the days when life was not so easy. He could still remember the narrow streets, the small rented room he once lived in, and the long nights when he went to sleep hungry. He remembered the feeling of being lost, hopeless, and unsure of how he would survive the next day. But then, in those days of struggle, there had been one person, a friend who had stood by him, who gave him a meal when he had none, who offered a blanket when the cold was too much, and who gave him hope when the world seemed to have turned away. That friend's face came clearly into his mind, and with it came a deep ache in his chest. The billionaire leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. It had been many years since he had last spoken to that friend. When his life had turned upward, when success had finally come to his door, he became so busy with business, travel, and responsibilities that he let go of many old connections. Now, with years behind him, he felt guilty. Why had he never called? Why had he never thanked the person who had once saved him from breaking apart completely? He opened his phone, the screen glowing softly in the dim light of the room. His hands trembled slightly as he searched through numbers, old and forgotten, buried in the long list of contacts he had carried for years. He wondered if his friend's number would still be the same. He wondered if the friend was even alive. He wondered if he would remember him at all. These questions filled his mind, and for a moment, he hesitated. Fear pressed against his chest. What if the friend had moved on? What if he answered coldly, or worse, did not answer at all? But something inside pushed him forward. It was a voice, quiet yet strong, telling him that some things must not be delayed. Life was short, and gratitude should not be left unsaid. He tapped on the number, and before he could change his mind, he pressed the call button. The ringtone echoed in his ear. 1 ring, 2 rings, 3. He waited, his heart beating faster with every sound. He could feel the weight of memories pressing against him, the laughter they had shared, the days of struggle they had walked through together, the promises they made to never forget each other no matter where life took them. A tear slipped down his cheek as he waited for the call to be answered. Then, suddenly, the ringing stopped, and a voice came through the line. But it was not the voice he expected. It was not the deep, warm tone of his old friend. Instead, it was a soft, young, and curious voice. A girl's voice. She sounded gentle, respectful, and a little surprised. "Hello," she said. The billionaire froze for a moment, confused. He looked at the number again, wondering if he had dialed wrong. But no, it was the same number he had saved years ago. He cleared his throat, trying to speak. "Hello. I am looking for an old friend. I believe this is his number," he said, his voice slightly shaking. There was a small silence on the other side. Then the girl replied, "I'm sorry, sir. This number belonged to my father. He passed away some years ago. I keep the number active because it reminds me of him. Hardly anyone ever calls it anymore." The billionaire's heart sank. His chest tightened, and for a moment, he could not find words. The reality hit him like a wave. His old friend was gone. The person he had longed to thank, the one he had carried in his heart for so many years, would never answer his call again. But the girl's voice pulled him back. She sounded gentle and calm, and he felt something pure in the way she spoke. It was as if her tone carried a piece of the kindness her father had once shown him. The billionaire swallowed hard, fighting the lump in his throat. I knew your father, he said slowly. A long time ago, when I had nothing, he was there for me. He helped me when no one else would. I have carried his memory with me all these years. I thought maybe I could hear his voice again, just to say thank you. The girl listened quietly. Though she had never met this man before, she could sense the honesty in his words. Something in his tone was raw, filled with emotion, and it touched her deeply. She held the phone closer to her ear, almost afraid to interrupt. The billionaire continued, his voice trembling now. He gave me food when I was starving. He gave me a place to rest when I had no roof. He spoke words of courage when I was ready to give up. Your father's kindness is the reason I kept going, the reason I am where I am today. Without him, I don't know if I would have survived. Tears burned his eyes, and his voice cracked. I became successful. I built businesses, I gained wealth, but I never forgot him. I thought one day I would call, one day I would thank him. But I waited too long. On the other end, the girl's eyes filled with tears as she listened. She had known her father as a loving parent, a hard-working man who never let his family go hungry. But she had never heard stories like this, stories of strangers he had helped, lives he had touched beyond their home. For a moment, she felt as if she was hearing her father's spirit speaking through someone else's heart. The billionaire pressed his hand against his chest, trying to steady his breathing. The call that began with hope now carried both sorrow and gratitude. He realized he would never hear his friend's voice again, but in this young girl's presence, he felt a small piece of him return. The silence between them was heavy, yet it was filled with meaning. Neither needed to speak more, because in that short exchange, a bridge had been built between past and present, between loss and remembrance, between a man who once needed help and a daughter who now carried her father's legacy. The billionaire leaned back in his chair, tears streaming down his face. His heart was breaking, yet at the same time, it was healing. For even though his old friend was gone, the love and kindness he had shown still lived on, carried in the voice of the girl who now listened with such care. And so, the story that had started with a single call became something far greater, a reminder that the good we do never truly disappears. It remains, like an echo, touching lives even after we are gone. The silence between them lingered for a few seconds after the billionaire spoke, as if the world itself had paused. On one side of the call was a man whose life had been built on power, money, and success, but who now sat with a heart full of regret. On the other side was a young girl who had just heard a stranger talk about her father in a way she had never imagined. Her hands shook slightly as she held the phone. The billionaire cleared his throat, trying to find the right words again. "I'm sorry," he whispered, almost ashamed. "I didn't mean to trouble you. I thought I would hear his voice. I never expected," he could not finish. His voice cracked, and he let out a deep breath. The girl, though young, felt the weight of his words. She had lost her father some years ago, and not a day passed when she didn't think of him. Hearing this stranger call him a hero, a savior, touched something deep inside her heart. She wanted to know more. Her voice softened as she spoke. "Sir, you are not troubling me," she said gently. "I didn't know my father helped someone like you. Could you tell me more about him? What was he like back then?" The billionaire was stunned. He had expected the call to end quickly, but instead, this girl wanted to hear about her father. His chest grew tight again, but this time with a strange warmth. He realized this was his chance, not just to thank, but to honor his friend's memory. He nodded to himself and began speaking. "Your father," he said slowly, "was a man unlike any other. I was nothing back then, just a young man without money, without a home, without a plan. People walked past me as if I was invisible. But your father," he stopped. "He noticed me. He saw me as a human being when the world treated me like I was nothing. He invited me to his small home. It wasn't much, but it felt like heaven to me. He shared his food, even when I knew it meant less for him. He gave me a bed on the floor, a pillow, and most of all, he gave me words. He said, "Don't give up. The world is hard, but you are stronger than you think." I held onto those words for years. The girl's eyes filled with tears. She remembered her father's kindness in their own home, how he would give the last piece of bread to someone hungry, or how he would smile at strangers even when he was tired. But to hear that he had carried a stranger through such dark times made her proud in a way she had never felt before. She pressed the phone closer to her ear and whispered, "That sounds like him. He was always like that. Always giving." The billionaire closed his eyes, remembering the nights he had stayed in that tiny house. "Yes," he said softly. "And he never asked me for anything. Not money, not favors, nothing. He gave freely, and that kindness shaped me. Even when I became successful, I remembered his face. Sometimes when I was about to make a selfish choice, I thought of him. And it stopped me." The girl smiled through her tears. She had always thought of her father as her hero, but now she realized he had been someone else's hero too. She wanted to know more, to hold on to this moment that felt like she was speaking to her father through the heart of this man. "Sir," she said, her voice trembling a little, "I didn't know my father touched someone's life like this. You have no idea how much it means to hear these words. After he passed away, I often wondered if the world remembered him. Sometimes I felt like his goodness would fade away because he wasn't here anymore. But today, you've reminded me that his kindness still lives." The billionaire's throat tightened again, and tears rolled down his cheeks. He whispered, "Yes, it lives. It lives in me, and it lives in you." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The silence was not empty, but full of meaning, like a bridge connecting two souls across time. The billionaire could hear the emotion in her breathing, and she could hear the raw honesty in his pauses. Finally, the girl asked, Do you have a family, sir?" The billionaire hesitated. He had everything the world admired: mansions, cars, companies, and fame, but when it came to family, he had very little. He had grown distant from his relatives over the years, too busy chasing wealth, too focused on success. His voice grew quiet. "No one close," he admitted. "Money surrounded me, but love didn't. That's why I wanted to call your father. He reminded me what real family means, even if we were not related by blood." The girl's heart ached as she listened. She could feel his loneliness hidden behind his wealth. "You know," she said softly, "my father always said that family isn't just blood. Family is anyone who stands with you when the world walks away. That's why he probably helped you. To him, you must have been family too." The billionaire covered his face with his hand, his shoulders shaking. Her words struck him deeply, because they were almost the same words her father had once spoken to him. He could still hear it: family is not always born, sometimes it is chosen. He took a shaky breath. "Your father saved me, child. And now, hearing your voice, it feels like he is here again. Thank you for answering this call. I thought I was too late, but maybe, in some way, I am not." The girl wiped her tears and whispered, "Maybe you were meant to call today. Maybe he wanted me to hear this story through you. It feels like he's smiling somewhere, knowing that you remembered him." The billionaire looked around his study, the grand paintings, the golden frames, the expensive objects. For the first time, they felt meaningless. What mattered was this call, this connection, this reminder of love. They spoke for a while longer, sharing memories. The girl told him how her father would sing while fixing things in the house, how he would laugh with neighbors, how he would always stop to help even when he was tired. The billionaire listened carefully, his heart soaking in every detail, as if he was collecting pieces of his friend through her words. In return, he told her more stories of his younger days with her father's small acts of kindness, gentle advice, and the laughter they shared despite the struggles. As the night deepened, the billionaire realized something important. He had picked up his phone hoping to reconnect with an old friend, but instead, he had found a new one. In the voice of the girl, he had found not just her father's memory, but also the same spirit of kindness and hope. When the conversation grew quiet again, the girl said softly, "Thank you, sir, for remembering him. You have given me a gift today. I'll never forget this call." The billionaire wiped his face and whispered back, "No, child. It is you who gave me the gift. You gave me a piece of him back, and you gave me a reason to remember what matters in life." And with that, he realized that sometimes, the unexpected voices we hear are the ones that heal us the most. The billionaire sat quietly with the phone pressed to his ear, listening to the young girl breathe softly on the other end. His heart was heavy with memories, yet lighter than it had been in years. Something about her gentle presence gave him courage to share more, to finally release the words he had carried inside for so long. He leaned back in his chair, his gaze fixed on nothing, as his mind traveled back to the days of his youth. He cleared his throat, his voice almost trembling. "Do you want to know how your father saved me?" he asked softly. "Yes," the girl replied quickly, almost eager. "Please tell me. I want to know everything." The billionaire closed his eyes. "It was many years ago. I was young and lost, with no direction. I had come to the city with big dreams, but reality was much harsher than I imagined. I had no family to lean on, no home to return to. Some days, I went hungry. Some nights, I slept on benches, shivering in the cold. People passed me by without a glance. To them, I was invisible, another lost soul in a crowded world." His voice cracked as he continued, "One evening, when I was sitting on the side of a road, too tired to move, too weak to beg, your father stopped. He looked at me not with pity, not with judgment but with kindness. He asked if I was hungry. I couldn't even speak. I just nodded. He gave me food, warm bread, and a bowl of soup. To this day, I can still taste it. It wasn't just food, it was hope. He didn't walk away after that. He invited me to his home, though it was small and humble. That night, I slept under a roof again for the first time in weeks." The girl listened with wide eyes, tears forming as she imagined her father extending his hand to a stranger. She had seen him do it for neighbors, for children, for travelers. But to know he had done it for a man who later became a billionaire filled her with awe. The billionaire went on, "I thought it would be just one night. But your father, he let me stay longer. He never treated me as a burden. He treated me as if I mattered. I helped him with small chores, and in return, he gave me food and a bed on the floor. But more than anything, he gave me his words. Every night, before we slept, he would tell me something encouraging. He would say, 'Tomorrow will be better,' or 'Don't give up, life is testing you.' Those words gave me strength. I started to believe I could stand again, that my dreams were not foolish." The girl smiled through her tears. "That sounds just like him. He always encouraged me too. Whenever I felt sad or weak, he would say almost the same things. He told me that even when the world feels heavy, I should never let go of hope." The billionaire's chest tightened. Yes. That was his gift. He had little money, little comfort, but his heart was richer than anyone I have ever known. You know, sometimes we think only grand gestures change lives. But your father proved that small acts of kindness can save a soul. He saved mine." The girl wiped her face with her hand, whispering, "I wish I had known this side of his story earlier. He never told me. He never spoke about the people he helped. To me, he was just Dad, the man who made me laugh, who tucked me in at night, who taught me how to ride a bike. But now I see he was much more than just my father. He was someone else's hero. The billionaire smiled faintly, though tears streamed down his cheeks. Yes, he was a hero. Not the kind with fame or medals, but the kind the world truly needs. Quiet heroes, who give without expecting anything back. For a moment, the two of them sat in silence, connected by shared love for the same man. The girl felt like she was discovering her father all over again, through the eyes of this stranger who had once been broken but was lifted by his kindness. The billionaire, on the other hand, felt as though he was finally giving voice to memories he had buried, memories that had shaped his life but never been shared. Then, the girl asked in a trembling voice, "What happened after you left his home? How did you become who you are today?" The billionaire took a deep breath. "When I stayed with him, I gained strength. Slowly, I found small jobs. He encouraged me to try again and again, even when I failed. His words became my shield. Eventually, I found work in a small shop, then in a factory. It was hard, but I never gave up because I always remembered his voice. Step by step, I climbed up. Years later, I built my own business. It grew, it expanded, and success followed. But through it all, I never forgot where it began with your father, with his kindness." The girl felt her heart swell with pride. "You carry him with you," she whispered. The billionaire nodded, even though she couldn't see him. "Yes, always. Sometimes, when I sit in my boardroom with men and women in suits, discussing millions of dollars, I think of him. I think of the simple man who gave me bread and said, 'You are stronger than you think.' That voice echoes louder in my mind than any applause I have ever received." The girl let out a soft sob. "I'm so glad you called. For so long, I missed him. I thought the world had forgotten him. But now I see, he lives in the people he helped. He lives in you." The billionaire pressed his hand to his chest, overwhelmed. "And he lives in you, his daughter. You carry his blood, his spirit, his smile, his kindness. You are his legacy." Her lips trembled as she whispered, "Do you really think so?" He replied firmly, "I know so. I can hear it in your voice. You have the same gentleness, the same heart. When you listened to me tonight, you carried your father's soul in your words. You gave me comfort, just as he once did." The girl covered her face with her free hand, crying quietly, but they were not just tears of sadness. They were tears of pride, of love, of a new bond forming between her and this man who was once a stranger but now felt like family. The billionaire wiped his own tears. For years, he had felt a hole in his heart, a regret that haunted him. But tonight, through this conversation, he felt as if that hole was finally being filled, not completely, but enough to bring peace. They spoke for hours, exchanging stories. The billionaire told her about the evenings he and her father spent talking under the stars, and she told him about the evenings her father tucked her into bed with the same wisdom. They laughed softly at the similarities, cried at the shared loss, and marveled at the strength one man had carried into both their lives. When the night grew late, the billionaire whispered, "Thank you for listening to me. I wanted to thank your father, but I realized tonight, thanking you is the same. You are his voice now." The girl nodded silently, her heart too full for words. The call had begun with surprise, confusion, and sorrow, but it had become something far greater. It had become a bridge of memory, a gift of truth, and a reminder that kindness never dies. It lives on in the people touched by it, and it spreads from one heart to another. And as they finally paused, both knew that this call had changed them forever. The billionaire sat in silence, his heart trembling with feelings he had not touched in years. On the other side of the line, the young girl took a deep breath before speaking again. Her voice was steady now, though he could hear the weight of emotion in it. She had listened carefully to every word he had spoken about her father, and now it was her turn to share something back, something that would change the way he looked at life forever. "Sir," she said softly, "my father always told me something when I was a child. He said, true wealth isn't about money. It's about the love you give, the kindness you spread, and the lives you touch." I never fully understood those words when I was little. To me, we were not rich. We lived simply, sometimes struggling. I used to wonder why he would still give so much to others when we had so little. But he always told me, kindness is the only treasure that never runs out. The billionaire pressed his hand against his eyes as tears welled up again. Those words felt like they were spoken directly to him, across time. He whispered, "That sounds just like him. Always giving. Always believing in something greater than himself." The girl nodded, even though he could not see her. Yes. He believed wealth of the heart was more important than wealth of the pocket. He would say, "If I die tomorrow but leave behind kindness in someone's memory, then I lived well." Listening to you tonight, I realize that he truly did live well, because he left his kindness in you. The billionaire's chest tightened, and he let out a shaky breath. He had spent years building his empire, gathering riches, chasing recognition. But sitting here, listening to this young girl repeat her father's wisdom, he realized how empty it all seemed compared to the richness of a life lived for others. He lowered his head and whispered, "I thought I was wealthy, but tonight, I realize I was poor in the ways that matter most." The girl's tone grew gentler, almost like a guiding voice. "Don't say that, sir. You remembered him. That means you carried his light with you all along. Maybe you didn't see it, but it was there. That is also wealth. My father would have been proud to know you never forgot him." The billionaire shook his head slowly, though he couldn't stop a small smile from forming. Her words carried both truth and comfort, like her father's once had. He could almost hear his friend's voice echoing through hers. "He would have been proud of you too," he said quietly. "You are his daughter, but you speak with wisdom far beyond your years. Tonight, you remind me of him so much that it feels like I am speaking to him again." The girl felt her throat tighten. "Sometimes, I feel like he still speaks through me," she admitted. "There are days when I want to give up, when the world feels heavy, but I hear his voice in my heart, telling me to stand, to keep believing. Maybe he wanted me to be here tonight to pass that voice to you." The billionaire sat back, overwhelmed. He had answered millions of calls in his lifetime, business calls, investor calls, high-profile meetings, but none had ever touched him like this one. The words of this young girl had struck deeper than any deal or contract. It was as though her father's spirit had chosen this moment to reach him, to remind him of what truly mattered before it was too late. For a long moment, he couldn't speak. The silence hung gently, like a soft blanket over them both. Finally, with his voice breaking, he whispered, "You have given me more tonight than I can ever repay. You have given me back the part of myself I had lost." The girl smiled faintly through her tears. "You don't need to repay me. This call was not an accident. Maybe it was meant to happen. Maybe it was my father's way of reminding you, through me, that life is about love, not money." The billionaire laughed softly, though his voice shook with tears. "You know, in all my years of wealth, I thought I understood life. But tonight, a young girl reminded me of the truth I had forgotten. I wish the world could hear your words. They are worth more than gold." The girl hesitated for a moment before speaking again. "Sir, can I tell you one more thing he always said to me?" "Yes, please," the billionaire replied eagerly, like a child waiting for wisdom. "He told me, when you leave this world, no one will remember how much money you had. They will remember how you made them feel. He said that to me many times. And now, hearing how he made you feel, I finally understand what he meant. He may not have left us riches, but he left us something far greater. He left love in people's hearts." The billionaire broke down then. Tears streamed freely, his chest shaking with sobs. Those words pierced through his soul like an arrow, pulling away the layers of pride, greed, and ambition that had blinded him for years. He realized that no matter how many billions he earned, none of it would matter if he failed to touch lives with kindness. Through his tears, he whispered, he was right. He was always right. And tonight, you are right too. What you said has changed me. I can never look at my wealth the same way again. The girl's voice trembled, but it was filled with warmth. Then promise me, sir. Promise me you will honor him. Promise me you will use what you have, not just for yourself, but to make others feel the same way he made you feel. That would make him proud. The billionaire pressed his fist to his heart. I promise. I will honor him. I will honor you. I will spend the rest of my life making sure his kindness lives on, not just in memory, but in action. You have my word. The girl closed her eyes, whispering softly, thank you. That's all I could ever ask. They both sat quietly again, each lost in thought. For the girl, it was pride and peace, knowing her father's legacy was alive in ways she had never imagined. For the billionaire, it was a turning point, a rebirth of his soul. He realized that tonight was not just about remembering a friend, it was about awakening to a truth he had buried for years. He thought of all the people in the world who were just like his younger self, lost, hungry, invisible. He thought of how many lives could be saved with even a fraction of his fortune. And for the first time in his life, he did not think of wealth as numbers in a bank. He thought of it as bread in an empty hand, a blanket on a cold night, a word of hope whispered to someone on the edge of despair. And as the girl's words echoed in his heart, they will remember how you made them feel, he knew his life had just changed forever. The phone call stretched late into the night, yet neither the billionaire nor the young girl felt the passing of time. Their voices had carried stories, memories, and wisdom back and forth like gentle waves washing onto the shore. What began as a call of regret had become something far more powerful, a meeting of hearts, bound together by the memory of one man's kindness. The billionaire leaned back in his chair, wiping the tears from his face, though they continued to flow silently. His chest felt lighter than it had in years, as if a heavy stone had finally been lifted. He whispered softly, almost to himself, I've spent my whole life chasing wealth, but tonight I feel richer than ever before. And it's because of your father, and because of you. The girl's voice trembled, but it carried strength. You're not alone anymore, sir. My father might not be here, but you have me. And every time you remember him, you are keeping him alive. He always told me, kindness never dies. It lives in the hearts it touches. Tonight, I see it living in you. The billionaire pressed his palm against his chest, breathing deeply. You don't know how much those words mean to me. For years, I thought I had everything. But tonight, I see how much I was missing. Money filled my house, but not my heart. Your father filled my heart, and now you have too. The girl smiled faintly through her tears. Then promise me, sir, live the way my father lived. Don't let his kindness stop with you. Share it with others. That would be the best way to thank him. He nodded firmly, his voice steady despite his tears. I promise. I will use my wealth to honor him. From this night forward, my life will not just be about building businesses. It will be about building hope. I will feed the hungry, shelter the lost, and lift up the broken, just as he once did for me. That will be his legacy, through me. The girl's eyes glistened as she whispered, then he would be smiling right now. The billionaire closed his eyes and pictured his old friend, the warmth in his eyes, the kindness in his voice, the strength in his presence. For a moment, it was as if his friend was sitting beside him, smiling with quiet pride. The thought brought a new wave of tears, but this time they were not only tears of sorrow. They were tears of gratitude, of healing, of a promise fulfilled. Thank you, he whispered again. Thank you for giving me this gift tonight. I thought I had lost him forever, but through you, I found him again. The girl's voice softened, almost like a lullaby. You never lost him, sir. He has always been with you. And now, he always will be. The call grew quiet after that, not because there was nothing left to say, but because the silence was filled with meaning. They both felt the same thing, peace. The billionaire no longer carried the burden of regret alone, and the girl no longer carried the grief of her father in silence. They had shared it, and in doing so, had healed parts of themselves they never thought could be mended. When the billionaire finally looked at the time, he realized how long they had spoken. He took a deep breath and said, I should let you rest. But before I go, please know this: I will never forget tonight. I will never forget your father. And I will never forget you. You have given me back my soul. The girl's voice broke gently as she replied, and you have given me back my father. Thank you for that. Thank you for remembering him. They exchanged goodbyes, but neither wanted to end the call. Finally, with one last whisper of gratitude, the line went silent. The billionaire sat still, holding the phone to his chest, tears streaming down his face, his heart beating with a new rhythm, a rhythm of hope, love, and purpose. He rose slowly from his chair and walked to the large window of his study. Outside, the city lights sparkled against the dark sky. For years, he had looked at those lights as symbols of success, of power, of wealth. But tonight, they looked different. They looked like souls, millions of lives, each carrying a story, each carrying struggles and dreams. He realized then that his true wealth was not in his bank accounts, but in what he could give to those lives. The following morning, the billionaire woke with a new determination. He called his advisors, not to discuss profits or investments, but to start something new. He spoke with passion, telling them he wanted to build foundations for the poor, schools for children, shelters for the homeless. His team was surprised at first, but they saw a fire in his eyes that they had never seen before. It was not the fire of ambition, it was the fire of compassion. Day by day, he began to change. He visited places he had long ignored: soup kitchens, orphanages, hospitals. He gave not just money, but time. He listened to the stories of people who had been forgotten, and in each one, he saw a reflection of his younger self. He shook hands, he sat with them, he comforted them. And with every act, he felt closer to his old friend, as if he were walking beside him once more. The girl, too, carried the call with her. She told her family about it, and for the first time since her father's passing, they cried not only tears of sadness, but tears of pride. They realized that though he was gone, his goodness had planted seeds in places they never knew. And now, through the billionaire, those seeds were blossoming into something greater than they could have imagined. Weeks later, the billionaire returned to the small neighborhood where he had once struggled. He found the very street where his friend had first offered him food. He stood there quietly, memories flooding his heart. Then, with determination, he announced the opening of a community center in his friend's name. It would feed the hungry, educate children, and shelter those in need. On the front wall, in bold letters, were the words, "Kindness is the only treasure that never runs out." The day it opened, the young girl was there. She stood beside the billionaire as people entered the building with hope in their eyes. She held his hand, and together they looked at the sign. The billionaire leaned down and whispered, "He is here with us. This is his gift to the world, through us." The girl nodded, her heart swelling with pride and love. "Yes," she whispered. "This is exactly what he would have wanted." As the sun set that evening, the billionaire felt a peace he had never known before. The emptiness in his heart was gone, replaced with the warmth of a purpose greater than himself. He knew that his life, from this day forward, would not be remembered for the companies he built or the fortune he gathered. It would be remembered for the love he gave, the hope he spread, and the promise he kept to his old friend. And as he looked at the smiling faces of children playing in the courtyard of the new center, his eyes filled once again with tears not of sorrow, but of gratitude. Gratitude for a man who once shared bread with him, gratitude for a daughter who reminded him of true wealth, and gratitude for the chance to finally live a life that mattered. The call that began in loneliness had ended in transformation. The billionaire was no longer just a man of riches, he was a man of meaning. And in the silence of his heart, he whispered to the heavens, "Thank you, my friend. I will carry your light forever."